In a small village in Nigeria, there lived a woman named Adaeze. She was expecting her first child and was very excited. But Adaeze didn't like following rules. When the doctors and nurses told her what to eat during her pregnancy, she didn't listen. She ate whatever she wanted, whenever she wanted. Months passed, and Adaeze's belly grew bigger and bigger. Finally, the day came for her baby to be born. It was a boy, and they named him Chitty. But something was different about Chitty. His head was much bigger than normal babies. The doctors were worried. They told Adaeze, "This happened because you didn't follow our advice about food during your pregnancy." Adaeze felt bad, but it was too late now. She took Chitty home, hoping he would be okay. As Chitty grew, his head kept getting bigger. By the time he was ready to start primary school, his head was so big that people in the village called him Big Head Chidi. Some people were mean and laughed at him, but his parents loved him very much. On Chitty's first day of school, all the other children stared at him. Some pointed and whispered. Chitty felt sad and scared. He wanted to make friends, but no one wanted to play with him because of his big head. During break time, Chitty sat alone under a tree. A group of boys came up to him. The leader of the group, a boy named Emeka, said, "Hey, big head. You look like a headmaster with that huge head of yours." All the other boys laughed. From that day on, the children called Chitty, Headmaster, to make fun of him. Whenever Chitty walked into class, someone would shout, "Look out. Here comes the headmaster," and everyone would laugh. Chitty felt very sad. He didn't want to go to school anymore. But his mother, Adaeze, told him, "Chitty, you are special. Your big head means you have a big brain. Use it to show everyone how smart you are." Chitty decided to listen to his mother. He started studying very hard. In class, he always raised his hand to answer questions. At first, the other children laughed when he spoke. But soon, they realized that Chitty always gave the right answers. One day, during a math lesson, the teacher asked a very difficult question. No one could answer it, except Chitty. He explained the solution so well that even the teacher was impressed. After that, some of the children started to see Chitty differently. As weeks went by, Chitty kept doing well in all his subjects. He was always the first to finish his work, and he got the highest marks in tests. The teachers started to praise him, saying things like, "Well done, Chitty. You're so smart." But not everyone was happy about Chitty's success. Emeka, the boy who first called Chitty Headmaster, was jealous. He used to be the best student in class, but now Chitty was better than him. Emeka decided to make Chitty's life even harder. One day during break time, Emeka and his friends surrounded Chitty. Emeka said, "You think you're so smart, big head. Let's see how good you are at football." He threw a ball hard at Chitty's head. Chitty didn't have time to duck. The ball hit his big head and pop, the ball burst. Everyone was shocked. Chitty's head was so hard that it had broken the football. News of what happened spread quickly through the school. Now, the other children were not just laughing at Chitty. They were also a bit scared of him. No one wanted to fight with the boy who could burst a football with his head. But Chitty didn't want people to be afraid of him. He just wanted to have friends and be treated normally. He decided to use his smartness to help others. When his classmates had trouble with their homework, Chitty offered to help them. At first, only a few children accepted his help. But when they saw how the grades improved after studying with Chitty, more and more kids wanted his help. Slowly, Chitty started to make friends. One day, a new boy joined their class. His name was Obi, and he was very quiet. The other children didn't pay much attention to him, but Chitty noticed that Obi seemed sad. During break time, Chitty went to talk to Obi. "Hi, I'm Chitty," he said. "Would you like to play with me?" Obi looked up, surprised. "You want to play with me? But aren't you afraid of my stuttering?" Chitty smiled. "Why should I be afraid of that? Everyone is different in some way. Look at my big head. But that doesn't stop me from being friends with people." Obi smiled back, and from that day on, Chitty and Obi became best friends. They studied together, played together, and stood up for each other when other kids tried to be mean. As months passed, Chitty's reputation in the school changed. He was still called Headmaster, but now it wasn't always to make fun of him. Some kids used it as a nickname because Chitty was so smart and helpful, just like a real headmaster. But not everything was perfect. One day, during break time, Emeka and his friends were bothering Obi, making fun of his stutter. Chitty saw this and went to help his friend. "Leave Obi alone," Chitty said. "It's not nice to make fun of people." Emeka laughed. "Oh yeah, what are you going to do about it, big head?" Chitty didn't want to fight, but Emeka pushed him. Without thinking, Chitty moved his head forward, and it hit Emeka's forehead. Emeka fell back, holding his head. There was a small cut where Chitty's hard head had hit him. Everyone was shocked. Chitty felt terrible. He hadn't meant to hurt Emeka. The teachers came running, and both boys were taken to the headmaster's office. Chitty was very worried. Would he be expelled from school? But when the headmaster heard the whole story, he understood that Chitty was just trying to protect his friend. Chitty was given a warning, and Emeka was punished for bullying. After this incident, the other children were even more careful around Chitty. But instead of using this to his advantage, Chitty worked harder to be kind to everyone. He helped more students with their studies and always stood up for kids who were being bullied. By the end of the school year, Chitty had the highest grades in the whole school. The headmaster called Chitty's parents to his office. Adaeze and her husband were worried. Had Chitty done something wrong? But when they arrived, the headmaster was smiling. "Mr. and Mrs. Nwosu," he said, "I called you here to congratulate you. Your son Chitty has won a scholarship to the best secondary school in our state." Adaeze started crying with joy. She hugged Chitty tightly and said, "I'm so proud of you, my son. You've shown everyone that what's inside your head is more important than how big it is on the outside." As Chitty prepared to leave primary school, he felt both excited and nervous. He had finally found his place here, made friends, and earned respect. What challenges would he face in his new school? Would the students there accept him, or would he have to prove himself all over again? On his last day of primary school, all his classmates gathered around him. Even Emeka was there. Emeka stepped forward and said, "Chitty, I'm sorry for being mean to you. You're all right, big head." He held out his hand, and Chitty shook it, smiling. Then Obi spoke up. "We're going to miss you, Chitty. You're the best friend anyone could have." Chitty felt warmth in his heart. He had come so far from that scared little boy on his first day of school. "I'll miss you all too," he said. "But don't worry, I'll come back to visit. And who knows, maybe one day, I'll be a real headmaster at this school." Everyone laughed, but this time, they were laughing with Chitty, not at him. As he walked out of the school gates for the last time, Chitty held his head high, his big, strong, smart head that had gotten him through so much and would now lead him to new adventures. Chitty's first day at his new secondary school was both exciting and scary. The school was much bigger than his primary school, and there were students from all over the state. As Chitty walked through the gates, he could feel people staring at him. His big head still made him stand out. In his first class, the teacher asked everyone to introduce themselves. When it was Chitty's turn, he stood up confidently and said, "My name is Chitty Nwosu. I'm here on a scholarship, and I'm excited to learn with all of you." Some students whispered and giggled, but Chitty pretended not to notice. He remembered what his mother had told him. "Your big head means you have a big brain. Use it to show everyone how smart you are." As the weeks went by, Chitty faced many challenges. The work was much harder than in primary school, and some of the teachers were very strict. But Chitty studied hard and always paid attention in class. One day, during a physics lesson, the teacher asked a very difficult question. No one raised their hand to answer, except Chitty. The teacher, Mr. Okafor, looked surprised. "Yes, Chitty," he said. Chitty stood up and explained the answer perfectly. Mr. Okafor was impressed. "Well done, Chitty," he said. "That's absolutely correct. You have a good head on your shoulders." Some of the students laughed at this, thinking about Chitty's big head. But others were amazed at how smart Chitty was. After class, A girl named Amaka came up to Chidi. "That was really impressive," she said. "How did you know all that?" Chidi smiled. "I just like to read a lot," he said. "Would you like to study together sometime?" Amaka nodded, and soon Chidi had made his first friend at his new school. But not everyone was friendly. There was a group of older boys who liked to bully the younger students. Their leader was a big, tough boy named Chuku. One day, Chuku and his friends cornered Chidi in the schoolyard. "Look at this little scholarship boy," Chuku said, laughing. "What's with your head? Ha! Are you some kind of freak?" Chidi felt scared, but he stood his ground. "There's nothing wrong with being different," he said. "And there's nothing wrong with working hard to earn a scholarship." Chuku didn't like this answer. He pushed Chidi, trying to make him fall. But Chidi's big head made him top-heavy, and he didn't fall easily. Instead, he stumbled forward, and his hard head bumped into Chuku's chest. Chuku let out a yelp of pain and stepped back, rubbing his chest. "Ow, what's your head made of, rock?" The other students who were watching started to laugh, not at Chidi, but at Chuku. The big bully's face turned red with embarrassment. "You'll pay for this, big head," he shouted as he walked away. After this incident, most students left Chidi alone. Some were afraid of his hard head, while others respected him for standing up to Chuku. Chidi focused on his studies and on helping other students who were struggling. One day, the school announced a big inter-school quiz competition. Each school would send a team of 3 students to compete. Chidi's hand shot up when they asked for volunteers. The teacher in charge, Mrs. Adaeze, looked at Chidi thoughtfully. "Okay, Chidi," she said. "You can be on the team. But remember, this isn't just about being smart. You need to work well with your teammates too." Chidi's teammates were Amaka and a boy named Adaeze. At first, they were unsure about working with Chidi. They had heard he was smart, but they worried his big head might make people laugh at their team. But as they practiced for the competition, Amaka and Adaeze realized how knowledgeable Chidi was. He knew so many things, and he was always patient in explaining things they didn't understand. The day of the competition arrived. Chidi, Amaka, and Adaeze were nervous but excited. As they walked onto the stage, Chidi could hear some people in the audience whispering about his big head. But he held his head high and focused on the questions. The competition was tough. The other schools had very smart students too. But Chidi and his team worked well together. When Chidi didn't know an answer, Amaka or Adaeze often did. And when they were stuck, Chidi's wide knowledge usually saved them. In the final round, Chidi's school was tied with another school. The quiz master asked the last question: "What is the capital of Burkina Faso?" Chidi's hand hit the buzzer first. "Ouagadougou," he said confidently. There was a moment of silence, and then the quiz master smiled. "That is correct. Chidi's school wins the competition." The audience erupted in cheers. Amaka and Adaeze hugged Chidi, and even the students who used to make fun of him were cheering his name. For the first time, Chidi felt truly accepted at his new school. After the competition, many students wanted to be Chidi's friend. They asked him to help them study and invited him to play games during break time. Chidi was happy, but he didn't forget the people who had been kind to him from the beginning, like Amaka. As the school year went on, Chidi continued to excel in his studies. But he also learned to have fun and make friends. He joined the school's debate club and even tried playing football. Though after the incident in primary school, he was careful not to head the ball. One day, Chidi's old friend Obi came to visit him at school. Obi was amazed at how well Chidi was doing. "You've really found your place here," Obi said. "I'm so happy for you, Chidi." Chidi smiled. "Thanks, Obi, but I haven't forgotten where I came from. How is everyone at our old school?" Obi told him about their old classmates and teachers. Then he said, "You know, Chidi, you've inspired a lot of people back home. Some of the younger kids with, well, differences. They look up to you. They say, if Big Head Chidi can do it, so can I." Chidi felt proud hearing this. He realized that his big head, which had once been a source of shame, was now a symbol of hope for others. As Chidi's first year in secondary school came to an end, he received his report card. He had the highest grades in his year. The headmaster called Chitty to his office. "Chitty," the headmaster said, "I'm very impressed with your performance this year. Not just academically, but in how you've conducted yourself. You've shown great character." Chitty thanked the headmaster, feeling proud but also humble. The headmaster continued, "I have a special task for you next year. We have a new program where older students mentor younger ones. Would you be interested in being a mentor?" Chitty's eyes lit up. "Yes, sir," he said enthusiastically. "I'd be honored to help other students." As Chitty left the headmaster's office, he thought about how far he had come. From being mocked and called headmaster as an insult in primary school, he was now going to be a real leader and mentor to younger students. He touched his big head and smiled. It had been a challenging year, but he had overcome every obstacle. He had proven that it's not the size of your head that matters, but what's inside it, and more importantly, what's in your heart. Chitty walked out into the sunshine, ready to face whatever new adventures the next school year would bring. His big head held high, not as a burden, but as a crown. Years passed, and Chitty continued to excel in his studies. His role as a mentor to younger students helped him develop leadership skills, and he became known throughout the school as someone who was always willing to help others. As Chitty entered his final year of secondary school, it was time to think about his future. Many of his teachers suggested he should aim for a top university, perhaps to study medicine or engineering. But Chitty had other ideas. One day, he asked to speak with his favorite teacher, Mr. Okafor. "Sir," Chitty said, "I've been thinking about my future. I want to become a teacher." Mr. Okafor looked surprised. "A teacher, Chitty? With your grades, you could do anything. Are you sure?" Chitty nodded. "Yes, sir. I've realized that helping others learn gives me the most joy. And maybe one day, I could even become a headmaster." Mr. Okafor smiled, remembering how the other students used to call Chitty headmaster, to make fun of him. "Well, Chitty," he said, "if that's your dream, I believe you can achieve it. You certainly have the head for it." They both laughed at the joke. After finishing secondary school with top honors, Chitty enrolled in a prestigious teacher training college. The workload was heavy, but Chitty was used to studying hard. He also continued to stand out because of his big head, but now he wore it with pride. During his teaching practice, Chitty was assigned to a struggling school in a poor neighborhood. Many of the students there had given up on education, thinking it wouldn't make a difference in their lives. Chitty remembered how he had felt in primary school when everyone made fun of him. He understood what it was like to feel different and discouraged, so he worked extra hard to connect with these students. One day, a boy named Emeka, not the same Emeka from his primary school, was causing trouble in class. When Chitty asked him to pay attention, Emeka snapped, "Why should I listen to you, big head? School is useless anyway." The class went silent, waiting to see how Chitty would react. Chitty took a deep breath and said, "Emeka, do you know why my head is so big?" Emeka looked confused. "No," he said, "it's because when I was young, many people made fun of me, just like you're doing now," Chitty explained. "But I decided to fill this big head with knowledge. And now, I have the chance to share that knowledge with you. Don't you think that's pretty useful?" The students were quiet for a moment, then a few of them chuckled. Even Emeka cracked a smile. From that day on, the class was more respectful, and many students started to show more interest in their studies. By the end of his teaching practice, Chitty had made such an impact that the school's headmaster wrote a glowing recommendation for him. "Mr. Nwosu has the potential to be not just a great teacher, but a transformative educational leader," the letter said. After graduating from the teaching college, Chitty returned to his home state and got a job at his old primary school. It felt strange to walk through those gates again, this time as a teacher rather than a student. Some of the older teachers remembered Chitty. His former maths teacher, now nearing retirement, said, well, if it isn't Big Head Chitty. I always knew you'd go far, my boy." Chitty threw himself into his work, always looking for new ways to engage his students and make learning fun. He started after-school programs for struggling students and a debate club to help build confidence in public speaking. One day, a new student joined Chitty's class. The boy had a visible scar on his face and was very shy. Some of the other children started to whisper and point. Chitty saw this and decided to address it head-on. "Class," he said, "we're all different in our own ways. Some differences we can see, like my big head or Adebayo's scar. Some we can't see, but these differences are what make us special. They're not reasons to treat anyone unkindly." The students listened attentively, and after that, they made an effort to include Adebayo in the games and group work. Chitty smiled, remembering how he had felt when he was in their place. Years passed, and Chitty's reputation grew. He became known in the community as a dedicated teacher who could connect with even the most challenging students. Parents would specifically request for their children to be in his class. When the current headmaster announced his retirement, many people suggested Chitty should apply for the position. At first, Chitty was hesitant. He loved being in the classroom with the students. But then he realized that as headmaster, he could have an even bigger impact on the school and the community. The selection process was rigorous, with candidates from all over the state applying. Chitty had to present his vision for the school, undergo multiple interviews, and even take a leadership assessment test. Finally, the day came when the school board would announce the decision. The entire school gathered in the assembly hall. The chair of the school board stood up and said, "After careful consideration, we are pleased to announce that the new headmaster of our school will be Mr. Chidi Nwosu." The hall erupted in cheers. Students and teachers alike were thrilled. As Chidi walked to the front, he could hear some of the students whispering excitedly, "Our new headmaster really is Headmaster Big Head." Chidi laughed to himself. The nickname that had once been used to mock him was now a term of endearment and respect. In his acceptance speech, Chidi said, "I stand before you today, not just as your new headmaster, but as someone who sat where you sit now. I know the challenges you face, because I faced them too. But I also know the potential each of you has. Together, we will make this school a place where every student, no matter how different they might seem, can thrive and succeed." As headmaster, Chidi worked tirelessly to improve the school. He introduced new programs to support students with different learning needs, started a school garden to teach about nutrition and responsibility, and even set up a scholarship fund to help bright students from poor families continue their education. One day, as Chidi was walking through the school grounds, he overheard a group of students talking. One of them said, "I heard Headmaster Chidi's head is so big because it's full of all the knowledge in the world." Another student replied, "Well, I heard it's because his heart is so big, it couldn't all fit in his chest." Chidi chuckled to himself as he walked past. It seemed his big head was still a topic of discussion, but now in a way he could never have imagined when he was a student himself. Years went by, and under Chidi's leadership, the school flourished. It became known as one of the best primary schools in the state, with students regularly winning academic competitions and going on to excel in secondary school. One day, Chidi received a letter. It was from his old classmate, Emeka, the boy who had first called him headmaster, to make fun of him. Emeka wrote that he had heard about Chidi's success and wanted to apologize for how he had treated him when they were children. Chidi wrote back, thanking Emeka for his letter and assuring him that all was forgiven. He ended the letter by writing, "In a way, I should thank you. If you hadn't called me headmaster all those years ago, who knows if I would have ended up where I am today." As Chidi sealed the envelope, he thought about the long journey that had brought him to this point. From a boy mocked for his big head to a respected headmaster shaping the futures of hundreds of children. He realized that every challenge he had faced had helped prepare him for this role. Chidi walked to his office window and looked out at the schoolyard, where children were playing happily. He saw a boy with thick glasses being included in a game of football, and a girl with a limp being helped up the stairs by her classmates. He smiled, knowing that in this school, every child knew they were valued, no matter how different they might be. As the bell rang signaling the end of break time, Chidi straightened his tie and prepared to start his rounds of the classrooms. He touched his big head, now graying at the temples, and smiled. It had taken him on quite a journey, this head of his. And he couldn't wait to see where it would lead him next.